British American. Is this a white collar, mate? Is this a white collar? Dude. Color. Color. Mate. Dude. हाँ.
तो आज हम सीखेंगे इंग्लिश में कि चाय में क्या क्या डलता है। चाय पत्ती को हम इंग्लिश में टी लीव्स कहते हैं। सौंफ को हम इंग्लिश में फेनल कहते हैं। छोटी इलायची को हम इंग्लिश में ग्रीन कार्डमम कहते हैं। अदरक को इंग्लिश में जिंजर कहते हैं। दालचीनी को हम इंग्लिश में सिनेमन कहते हैं। लौंग को हम इंग्लिश में क्लोव्स कहते हैं। हिंदी से इंग्लिश सीखने के लिए मुझे फॉलो करें।
5 small things that when you apply them in your life, it will immediately become better. When you miss someone, call them. When you appreciate someone, show them. When you love someone, tell them. When you need someone, ask them. And when you make a mistake, tell them I'm sorry. Follow me for more.
My own or on my own. What difference does the little preposition on make? Quite a lot. Let's have a look together. My own or your own after a verb means that we do something to or for ourselves instead of somebody else doing it to or for us. I like the idea of growing my own vegetables. Have you ever cut your own hair? Obviously, you can change my or your for any other possessive adjective. On my own or on your own means exactly the same as alone. I don't think I could live on my own. Have you ever been on holiday on your own? Again, you can change my or your for any other possessive adjective. In these cases, you can also say by myself or by yourself using the reflexive pronoun with exactly the same meaning. Have you ever cut your own hair?
Used to and would both show routines in the past. For example, at university, I would wake up at 5 a.m, then I would go to the gym, then I would study hard, then I would revise for the next day. A routine in the past. Used to is the same, but with used to, we compare it to now. I used to do that, but now I don't. I used to love this, but now I don't.
Welcome to this video. Today you're going to learn how to use the active voice and the passive voice. This is a question that a student had submitted and it's a great question, so I am happy to answer it for you. Of course, I'm Jennifer from jforcesenglish.com and this channel is dedicated to helping you feel confident speaking English in public so you can take your career and your life to the next level. Now, before we go any further, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. Now, let's dive in with this video. Let's talk about how to use the active voice and the passive voice. In the active voice, the subject comes before the verb. This is the standard English sentence structure where we have subject, verb, object. When we have the subject before the verb, we're stressing who or what is doing the action. Of course, the action is the verb. In this sentence, she taught the students the active voice. She taught the students the active voice. The subject of the sentence is she. The verb, of course, is taught, which is the past form of to teach. She taught. Now, who did she teach? The students. The students are receiving the teaching. The students are not doing the action, they're receiving the action. That's a really important point to understand to know how to switch between the active voice and the passive voice. So the subject is doing the action, she is teaching, and the students, which is the object of the sentence, are receiving the action. With the passive voice, the receiver of the action, the person or the object receiving the action, comes before the verb. In that case, it becomes the subject of the sentence. But keep in mind, it comes before the verb, but that person or object is not doing the action. They're receiving the action. So I can take my previous sentence and change it to the passive voice and say, the students were taught the active voice. The students is now the subject of this sentence, although they're receiving the action. They're not doing the action. The students were taught the active voice. Now notice how the verb tense changes. In our active voice, we had the past simple. In our passive voice, we need to form the passive using the verb to be and the past participle. The past participle is the same in all sentences, but you need to take your verb to be and conjugate your verb to be accordingly. How do you know how to conjugate it? It's really simple. Just conjugate it in the same form as the active voice. So if the active voice is in the past, then your passive voice is also in the past. But notice here, I have were, the students were taught. I have were because students is the subject they. So we use was for the subject he, she, it, and we use were for the subject they. The students were taught. So make sure you conjugate your verb to be according to the verb tense of the active voice, but you also have to conjugate it to match the subject. Now notice here, the students were taught the active voice. The person or the object doing the action isn't even mentioned in this sentence. And that's commonly done. We just drop the person or object doing the action entirely in the passive voice. If you want to include the person or object doing the action, you use the preposition by, and then you identify the person or the object. So I could say, the students were taught the active voice by the teacher or by her, for example. But remember, that's optional. So why do we have an active voice and a passive voice? What is the purpose of this? Well, you should know that the active voice is preferred in English. It's the preferred sentence structure because it's considered clear, concise, and easy to understand. But there are times when you're going to use the passive voice, and we use the passive voice really in 3 specific situations. 1, the subject is unknown. So we don't know who did the action. So you see this a lot in the media. I could say, the fire was started. I don't know who started the fire. So because of that, I'm using the passive voice because I just want to talk about the result of the action. The fire was started. We also use the passive voice when we know who the subject is, but that person or object is not important at all. So in that case, we want to just stress the result of the action, not the person or object who's doing the action. So in this case, the fire was started by the extreme drought. Maybe that's not important. The fact that there was a drought wasn't important at all. We just want our audience to focus on the fact that the fire was started. Now, a final reason why we use the passive voice is if we want to avoid placing blame or identifying someone or something as responsible for the action. This is common in a workplace situation when we don't want to say you did this or you didn't do this. For example, I might say the meeting wasn't scheduled. And that sounds a lot softer, more diplomatic than saying you didn't schedule the meeting. And that might offend you. You might become defensive, and it might create an awkward situation. So if we want to be diplomatic and avoid placing blame or identifying someone as responsible, we can use the passive voice as well. But just remember, although the passive voice absolutely is used in English, and you should feel comfortable switching between the active and passive voice, the active voice is preferred and is way more common than the passive voice. With that said, it's your turn to practice. I want you to leave an example in the active voice, but then take that example and switch it to the passive voice. So you get really comfortable switching between the active and passive. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe. And before you go, make sure you head on over to my website, jforrestenglish.com, and download your free speaking guide. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And until next time, happy studying! Look at you mastering advanced English grammar and switching between the active and the passive. Way to go! You're a rock star! I'll see you in my next video. Bye!